on tour life for the very first time. Cale Leiviska, how's it going, brother?
Yo, what's up, guys? Thank you so much for having me. What's up, Brody? What's up, Yuli?
What's up,
Dude,
man?
we're doing good. We're happy to have you on here. All right. I got a lot to talk about, so I want to jump into it. First, I don't know if I've ever congratulated you on the kiddo. How's it being a dad? I see your Instagram. If you guys want to go and see like what a perfect family looks like, go to Cale's Instagram. He's got tons of like perfect family photos. Go check it out. But yeah, how's it being over there having a little kiddo running around?
It's so wild, man. It's unbelievable. We've been on the road for about 2 months. We were down in Charleston, and we just got home like 3 nights ago, and we're finally home, and it's just unbelievable. And it's funny because I always like, seeing my friends and family post pictures of their babies all the time, and I was like, oh, does that? And then here I am doing it all the time, of course.
Yeah. I was gonna say you got like I was scrolling through your Instagram. You got like the cool like Thanksgiving like pumpkin patch photos, and then you've got like the cool disc golf photos, and now we're in Christmas season. You're doing it right, man. That's really, really exciting over there. All right, the first thing I want to talk about here. And Silas, how's the audio going? There was a little kind of weirdness. Okay, Silas is working on it. Okay. First question. And you kind of brought this up. So I'm very interested in what you said. How does it feel to be on the all-time money list record with these names? I'm going to list off some of these names that you accompany here. Paul McBeth, Ricky Wysocki, Barry Schultz, Dave Feldberg, Ken Climo, Nicola Castro, Calvin Heimberg, Paul Uleberry, yourself, and Matt Oram. That's the top 10 all-time PDGA earnings list. That is quite a list. Holy smokes.
That's quite the list, Yuli.
Man, that's a lot of years. It's a lot of tournaments, yeah, man. Dude.
I know. When I see all those names besides Calvin, that's a lot of people that have been doing it for a long time, some of the greats. So that's quite the honor, and it speaks to how long Yuli and I have been doing it, how long we've been grinding, how long we've been enjoying this game. That's wild. That's a lot of tournaments. That's over 400 tournaments for me. So that's pretty wild.
How long do you think it's gonna be before we're like in 40th place on there? I feel like that's a few years away, honestly. Like with how much money these people are making every single year, it took me 10, 15 years to accumulate over 100 grand probably, and they're doing it in seasons. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, the highest cash earners each season now is well over 100 grand, and you figure what's it going to be like in 5 years? I mean, people are probably going to be hitting $500,000 for a season potentially. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. So, obviously, you and I, we want to continue to do this for a long time, and hopefully we're getting some of these big checks as well. But yeah, it's going to be tough to stay in that top 10 for too much longer with how well these kids are playing and how much money's in the purses.
They better start making an inflation one. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because some of the tournaments you guys played, like if you didn't get first, second, or third, like you didn't make anything.
No, yeah, nothing.
Where some of these tournaments moving forward, like 20th place, you might be making like 4 digits.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so guess how much money I made for the only national tour, so Elite Series that I ever won. Guess how much money that was?
What year was it?
Probably like
2011.
Oh yeah,
probably 2,500.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe 3,000.
$1,600.
Yeah, I mean that's like a normal A tier now, right?
Yeah, you can find that could be a B tier. I mean, I've won C tiers for that much for sure. It's crazy.
It's crazy. But yeah, that's a sick list to be on, for sure. All right, a lot of people want to know what is your current involvement right now with Prodigy? Are you? Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, with Prodigy. So it was 2013 when we started up the company. I was one of the original investors in the company, one of the original founders. So with that initial contract that we signed, we were given a certain amount of shares just for being a part of that. And then that first year, I was given the opportunity to buy in for additional shares, which I did take them up on that. So I'm technically, I own, 2% of the shares, I guess you could say. But yeah, I've been with them with the start, since the start. And, so yeah, I've seen, the whole cycle of the company this far. And, yeah, we've been through a lot together.
So are you like just player, or do you have other things that you do for the company? How does that work?
Yeah, I guess you could call it like a consultant. I was on the board of directors for a couple of years there. But yeah, I guess, I'm consulted with on, disc production, mold production, stuff with the team. I try to give input, whenever they ask me, but, yeah, just, I consult with them on whatever they need.
So something I, have kind of seen as like people saying what Prodigy is like you get guys signed with Prodigy, they get really freaking good, and then they go somewhere else, right? That's kind of been a trend for like a couple years. You currently have two of the youngest, best players in disc golf right now, right? You've got Isaac Robinson, Ganon Burr. Is there more of an emphasis now on like, hey, we're going to try to keep these? Because I can see the appeal of like, hey, we're going to get guys cheap because they haven't made their name yet, and we're going to help build their name. And then once they get kind of too expensive, deuces, we're out, right? And you kind of could go that strategy. Is that the strategy that Prodigy you think continues, or do you think they're going to say, you know what? No, we want to ride with Isaac. Let's sign him for 10 years, like we've seen people do with Ricky. We've seen Discraft do with Paul. I know Calvin signed a long restructured deal with Innova. What are your thoughts on like the way that Prodigy is moving forward with their players?
Yeah, traditionally that's kind of how it has been for sure, but that's definitely not by design. All of these great players that we've had over the years, in a perfect world, we'd be keeping them and we'd, develop longer relationships with a lot of these guys. But the reality is it's like, we're such a relatively young company. I know a lot of people think of us for being along for so long, but, compared to companies like Innova and Discraft who've been in the game for 30, 40 years and, have much larger budgets than we do. We're kind of a small company compared to that. So, the fact that our team has performed as well as we have, I think it says a lot about what we've done so far. But yeah, it's tough to keep some of these players that are demanding so much money, and rightfully so, when, we have a little bit smaller budget to work with.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, Innova kind of showed what they like when they kind of let a lot of people go a few years ago. Everyone thought they were crazy, right? And they just were like, yo, Calvin's our guy. We're going to put all of our resources and funds into Calvin. We're going to still have other players signed, but we're not going to try to amass this team of where we're spending all this. And a lot of people thought that was a dumb idea. I think it's working. So I think there are different ways to make it happen. And I think if you find someone that is your guy and you want to ride with that guy, it makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense. So will be interesting to see.
To go with what you said, just to say to go with what you said, obviously, we like players like Isaac and Ganon, who are just, some of the youngest, brightest players in the game. We love, to keep those guys forever, but unfortunately, the reality is, I don't know for sure if that's going to be able to happen. I hope we can. But yeah, those guys have done so much for us and meant so much for Prodigy. So it'd be great to keep them, but we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, and I'm sure Ganon will get some information with him at some point in the next few weeks upcoming. Let's talk about your cash streak a little bit. Let's talk about this cash streak that you had. 14 years. 4,850 days, 370 tournaments. It started back in November 16th, 2008. It went all the way to February 26th, 2022, where you lost it by one shot on the last few holes at LVC. Do you remember those last few holes? Do you remember those last few holes?
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? I still think about those last few holes. And Brody, a lot of respect. I respect what you do. You're always doing your research. I appreciate that. I remember those last three holes like it was yesterday, honestly. And to the last hole specifically, It was at Vegas, and I was in the cash line. I remember this. I looked at the scores. I was like, oh, I'm in the cash. 1 stroke in. All I got to do is par this hole. And I can't remember the name of the course, but it's the one that finishes right there by where you turn all the carts in, where you had to
The
cross
clubhouse,
the road.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
They turned into that par 3, though.
Exactly. But this was back when it was the par 4, and it was when they had the basket across the road. Yeah. Okay. So I remember I'm like, just get this in bounds, lay up, take your par, and you're in the cash. And I hung my disc out a little bit wide, clipped the pine tree that was up there in bounds, slow rolled about 80 feet backwards out of bounds onto the path. And I'm just like, well, that's it. And I was like, well, maybe there's a chance I could get my driver up to the basket. I remember I threw this full flex driver shot, and it was one of the best shots I threw all tournament. Put it to about 20 feet, get up there, and doink the putt to miss the cash by 1 stroke. So, but honestly, it was such a blessing because I'm sitting there on that last hole in like 40th place, thinking about taking a par on the hole. Like that's not the kind of golf I want to be playing at all. So like missing the cash, after all that time, all those years, 300 plus tournaments, it almost like kind of freed me up to play a more fun style of golf. And it was honestly kind of a relief, to be honest with you.
Was there ever any other tournaments like that to where you're coming down the stretch and you're like right on the cash line and you kind of knew it and you obviously got the job done there, but were there any close calls that you can recall? Doesn't want to talk about it.
No, that was a bad question. Oh, he's back. Okay. I think we lost you there for a second.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we lost you for a second, but you're back now.
Okay, yeah. So I was saying 2021, there was a couple of those Pro Tour events where I started the final round kind of right on the bubble. And again, it was on my mind the whole time, and it made for a more stressful round than it had to be. But yeah, I remember a couple, there was probably 20, 30 events over that 300 event stretch where it was close. But yeah, there was nothing like that Vegas though. I remember I was so hurt in the moment when the streak was over. But then, a week or two went by, and I honestly felt freed up by a little bit.
I like asking this question because I think last cash pressure is like the most hilarious thing ever. There's nothing like it, right? Do you think
especially on like a 4-day tournament?
Yeah. Do you think that is it tougher as far as the pressure goes to win a tournament, or is it tougher to just when you're on the bubble and you're coming down the stretch? They're similar, but I always explain it like this: like last cash pressure is you're playing terrible.
Yeah, you're not playing well.
And so you're coming down the stretch, and then you're playing against guys down there.
You don't know where your drives are going.
Yeah, you're not in control of your game at all.
Super shaky.
100%. But then you're playing against guys who actually are playing really good because like they're trying to maybe cash for the first time ever. There's always those guys. And so they're fist pumping in your face, making these putts, and you're sitting there like, what are you doing, man? This is the worst I've ever played. But you still, the competitiveness is still there to where you're really trying to grind it out and find something in the last few holes. Which is harder, last cash pressure or winning a tournament to you?
Well, to me, I'd say winning the tournament, but when the streak was like coming into 14 years, it was the last cash pressure back then for sure.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying. It's so funny because like cashing on the Pro Tour, you guys know it's an accomplishment these days. You get top 30 at a Pro Tour event and you're playing probably 10-40 golf. And like you said, some of these kids, this might be the first time that's happened for them. So, you try to respect the moment and respect the sport. And even if I'm not having my best weekend, still try to gut it out and make something of it for sure.
All right, you've been touring. We just kind of talked about like your cash streak, and I'm sure you were playing disc golf well before your cash streak began. We've got some photos that you sent in to us of not just you and Yuli, but also our next guest coming on, Nico, as well. We'll see if we can throw those photos up from way back in the day. What
wow.
Is that top of the? Where is that?
Altageist.
Isn't that awesome? You remember where that is?
Isn't it Altageist, Germany?
It was, yeah, I think it was called Afterswang.
Afterswang. Okay, that was close.
And honestly, that was an unbelievable. I remember we were on like an 8-week trip. You remember that? That was one of the best disc golf experiences of my life. But this particular place right there was in the mountains of Bavaria, Germany. It was just a beautiful place. And in the background, you can almost kind of see it. Like there was just World War II remnants all over the place. And they actually tried to like carve like some of Hitler's writing into the mountain back there. But the war ended halfway through, so they stopped doing it. So you can kind of see it behind us. That was a wild place. That was quite the trip.
Crazy. So what are some of the things that like have changed touring, you know, the last couple years versus when you first started touring? What are some of the bigger changes? And Yuli, you guys can both pop in on this.
I mean, Yuli, like, you know, when we started doing this, things were just so different. We were just hitting the country, hitting as many tournaments as we could just because we loved competing so much. You know, the difference. Oh yeah, there's another trip from Amsterdam right there. But the difference now is there's just so much more on the line, I guess. You know, we were kind of doing it more for the love of the game. We were all young, bunch of kids just in the country trying to compete as much as we could. And just remember there was definitely a brotherhood among us. Yuli and I traveled together for at least a few years straight, back and forth across the country. And I just remember, you know, Yuli and I didn't even, we tried to find C tiers, B tiers, A tiers, whatever had a decent sized field, him and I were going to try to hit. And, you know, now it seems like among, you know, the best players in the world, everyone's playing the Pro Tour events, but we didn't have, you know, multiple Pro Tour events every single month that we could hit. There might only be one national tour event every couple months or something. So, you know, we loved it so much, and we were just hitting up at every tournament that we could.
Yeah, I mean, back then too, there was, it's a lot. It's hard to explain. The culture was different as far as like what was a great player back in the day. Like, if you look at somebody's win total, that was like a big thing. Like, you would have like a Moser who had like 100 wins and a Rico who had like 100 wins, and that was like a big focal point in my career as I wanted to get there. And nowadays, like, playing C tiers, B tiers, or whatever is almost looked down upon a little bit in at the very top of the sport, right? Because they're like, okay, there's Yuli playing another C tier. But when I came up, like, that was how you made your name, is how many wins do you have? You're a prolific winner on the, you know, on the tour. And that was a major goal of mine from the very beginning. Is, of course, I wanted to win a world championship. That's number one always that's always been the case in disc golf, which is great that we've been able to hold like that one thing. But then I wanted to win all those tournaments, right? I wanted to be known as a winner. And then the last one was like, eventually I want to make the Hall of Fame. Like, those were my 3 goals my whole career. And those were key focal points of doing those things back in the day. Now you look at it, and like I said, people look at me playing like little C tiers and stuff, and they don't understand that, no, that's like ingrained into like who I am as a player and what was built back then. Like, that was a big deal, you know?
Like, I don't have any of that. Like, when I came in, my first tournament, other than like the league that I had to play to get a rating to be able to play at Waco, which, Cale, I think we played together that round.
Yeah, your first big coming out party.
Yeah,
sure.
No idea what I was doing out there, but that was my first tournament. So I didn't jump into the, like you guys were saying, grinding at C and B and A tiers. And I even will sometimes have people be like, "You haven't even won an A tier yet," and I want to be like, I don't even know if I've played that many A tiers. I think I've only played a couple A tiers. Like, it's not like I'm, and to me, like, I don't have any care. And I think what you were saying, Yuli, like, people that have just come into the sport when the Pro Tour has kind of gotten to the level that it is now, I don't think they care either. Where in the past, if you went out and played a big A tier and like won, like, that was news. Like, people were talking about that. Where now, like, I see people post on their social media still that they won a tournament or whatever. But when I'm deciding what to talk about on Tour Life here, like, I'm not really talking about that. I'm not really talking about Haley King just won some tournament down somewhere, right? Now, obviously, there are some tournaments that will have like a bunch of big names show up, and that could be like a little preview of like what's to come. Or like when Simon changes when Simon goes to MVP and he might play an A tier before the season. It's like, ooh, let's see how he does with his new plastic. But I'm kind of in that realm of like, I just kind of follow the Pro Tour, and that's really all I care about. So
Yeah.
I get that side.
There was levels to it back then, Brody. There was, okay, you win a tournament, period. Great. That was like your graduation. You're a professional now. And then B tier, can you win a B tier? And then the big one was an A tier. Like, we really gauged how good you were by if you ever won an A tier or not. Like, if you didn't, there was no, there's no respect going down that way as far as what level you are. And national tour and A tiers back in the day kind of went hand in hand. Of course, there's a little level up as far as national tour. I remember like that was like a big deal when I won. I'm like, okay, I finally won a national tour. But even winning A tiers back then was super difficult. You know what I mean? Because you had regional players that held that down. And so, like, the traveling disc golf, you can ask Cale, if you traveled to somewhere, imagine playing like a Moser up in Delaware at an A tier back in the day. You probably weren't going to win. But Cale, yeah, tell us your experiences, because I mean that's one of the things that I really recall as being like super important.
What's something that you really miss that like used to happen on tour, and now that the tour is a little more professional, younger players are coming in, like what's something that isn't happening anymore that you kind of miss from the old days?
Miss taking top 4 every weekend.
Honestly, Brody, we're laughing, but that's probably the one thing I miss too is when I think about like 2008, 2009, I hate to say it, but I could kind of like play my C+, B- game, maybe still get top 5 in an A tier or something. And now it's like, if I do that, I'm missing cash on the Pro Tour for sure. But the way that the game is advancing, it's a beautiful thing. I don't want to see anything revert back to the way it was, but I think how Yuli said it's ingrained in him to play these smaller events. Like I just love competing. If I can't make it out on the Pro Tour for whatever reason, from the family or for businesses or whatever, I'll look up C tiers and B tiers around me, and I think I just enjoy playing tournaments. And I think if more of these young players did that and learned, played well and learned how to win, I think it could help people for sure. If they, because coming down the stretch, there's not a lot of pressure like having to hit a putt for the win. And on the Pro Tour for a lot of these players, it's not a realistic thing unless you play, out of your mind one weekend. So I think it's good to kind of sharpen your skills in some of these smaller tournaments.
No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I was able to kind of bypass this a little bit with my experience in other sports coming into disc golf. But yeah, if you're just kind of like just getting into disc golf or whatever, I agree. Like, get your toe wet in some of these smaller tournaments and slowly build your way. That's what me and Yuli have always said too on here. If you're trying to get known, if you're trying to get sponsored, if you're trying to get on the tour, like win the local tournaments, like beat the people in your local area, and then kind of make the jump. And this is more for like the young guys, right?
One more thing I just was kind of thinking about as you were saying that was when you asked about what we could go back to, what I kind of missed. When Yuli and I started playing, if you were a sponsored player, like if you were sponsored by Innova or Discraft, it was like the biggest deal in the world. You're like probably the best player in your region. And that's one thing that I kind of missed. It seems like, there's so many more companies and so many players getting sponsored at every level. MA1 players, MA2 players getting sponsored and stuff. I just remember the days when it was like, oh, you're sponsored by Innova? You're like literally probably the best player in your state to make that happen. So, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see like that's something that I could see going back to it, right? Like I think we see some teams kind of cutting back on like the street team and all this of where they're sponsoring. I mean, we saw Lone Star this year sponsor 500 people and a dog, right? So I think it could be going back to where, hey, let's just focus. Let's put most of our money, our resources and stuff on the pros. And then maybe we do have like an ambassador program as well, but you wouldn't really consider yourself like sponsored, right? You're not showing up to your local course saying like, I'm sponsored by Discraft, and Yuli shows up being like, I'm sponsored by Discraft. Like those two things are very different, right? Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, 100%. Because I remember like it was like probably 2005. I won the Minnesota State Championships, and Discraft called me up and asked me for sponsorship. and I thought I had made it. I was like one of only 2 people in my state to be sponsored at that time. And now, there's probably 25, 30 sponsored players in Minnesota alone, maybe even more than that. So,
yeah, that's funny because my first World Championships in the open division, I'll never forget this. I was playing against somebody, I can't remember his name, but he showed up and he was in of a gear for one of my rounds. Like, back in the day, they had like these black jerseys. They had not jerseys, but black collared shirts. They had blue ones and they had red ones. And if you had one of those, like, that was intimidating. And I remember thinking that, like, oh, this guy's sponsored for sure by Innova. He's going to destroy me. And he did. But it was like, once I saw those colors on him, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm on a card with somebody really good.
It really meant something. I remember that.
Maybe they can start like putting stars or something, kind of like what those college football teams do. Like the Ohio State puts like all the Buckeyes all over your helmets to let you know like who's playing well. Like you just show up with your like Prodigy bag and there's like 5,000 stars and you're like, holy cow, this guy's sponsored and good.
Oh,
like
this guy's got his stripes.
Yeah, this guy's got his stripes, exactly. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. So we've kind of been talking a little bit more, or we've been talking all about your playing style, but something that I think you've been one of the first to kind of do and kind of lead the path now. We've seen Paul Macbeth do it. We now have seen Nico, who's joining us. He'll be talking about it. Going out and actually creating, buying, building, and now running a disc golf course, a disc golf tournament. Like, talk to me a little bit about how that even came about. Like, how did that start? Like, how did you go and say, like, I want to own a disc golf course?
I think it probably started a long time ago. I think it probably is a lot of disc golfers' dream when you get into it full-fledged like we did to someday have, my own disc golf property. That was just a dream from the start. And never really thought it was too much of a reality, but back in, it must have been about 2012, 2013, I started really getting into the course design aspect of it. And I was getting hired to do a lot of courses around Minnesota. And once I started, getting 10, 15 courses under my belt, I really was like, someday I got to have my own property. We opened up a disc golf shop in 2013. It was called the Airborne Disc Golf Emporium. And we had this cool shop open for a couple of years, me and my partner. And we shut it down because we kind of went all online and, for whatever reason, we shut down the shop. And I said I wasn't going to open up another pro shop unless it was on my own course. So about 6-7 years went by before we got the preserve. And, it was just a dream that I always wanted to have my own property where all my friends and family could come play. And when it happened in 2020, and then all of a sudden the Pro Tour's coming, and it kind of blew up so fast and started snowballing so fast that, we didn't even understand how big it was going to get at the time. But, seeing how fast and how big it's gotten. And then this past year, we had the opportunity to get another disc golf property. It's an old course that used to be called Vision Quest in Minnesota. It's right up by Blue Ribbon Pines. It was one of the best courses in Minnesota for many years, but the old owner kind of let it go and sold it to a new guy who gave us the opportunity to kind of come in and run it. And I was like, you know what? We did this with the preserve. It worked. We got the community behind us. And this new property is only 18 holes, so it didn't seem like as much of an undertaking as the preserve. But, we were able to pull it off again. And, having a disc golf property is just a dream. And like you said, Nico with his and Paul with his, and I'm sure Yuli is probably going to have his before too long. And there's going to be a lot of us, I think. And, it'll be cool once the Pro Tour is made up of a lot of the players' courses. So I don't think it'll be too long.
It'll be cool to see too, like who ends up shifting into more of that designer role too, because we don't have right now, like we don't really have long-lasting design. There are a few, right? Like John Howick, I believe, right? That's a name that is familiar to me. There's a few that you can be like, oh yeah, that guy, I know who that is. But 30 years from now, like a Cale Leiviska design course, like that could be equivalent to like a Greg Norman design course,
Yep.
right? Or a Jack Nicklaus, something like that. We don't really have anything going that route, so that can be really, really interesting. One thing I do want to ask though, disc golf right now is on a weird. Some people want more like pay to play courses. Some people are like, no, get that out of here. I don't want that. Do you foresee courses like yourself? Like, do you see people going out and trying to create an experience, trying to create something more than just showing up, playing disc golf and leaving? Do you see that being like a profitable venture for more, companies, players in the future?
I definitely do, but it has to be the right market for sure. Because, up in Minnesota, we have thousands and thousands of disc golfers all around the Twin Cities metro area, maybe even hundreds of thousands. So it's really, we have courses about every 4 or 5 miles down here, and every single one is packed in the summertime. So, there's, in our particular area, there's a need for more and more courses, and all the free city courses and stuff are places where people can kind of learn how to play. But there's more and more of a desire around here for creating better playing environments, pay to play courses. And in Minnesota alone, we probably have 8 or 9 pay to play courses. But I remember when the first city course changed to pay to play, there was just like a complete uproar where people are upset about it. And now after about 5-6 years of that, it's become the norm, and people don't really bat an eye at it. So it kind of takes being in the right market and having enough disc golfers in your area for sure. But yeah, I think, disc golfers want to play on that disc golf country club. They want to play on something better than they've ever seen before. So I think for us, it's been very successful, and I think it can be for people all over.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, going to a course where I know people aren't going to be picnicking in the fairways, I'm not going to have like potential like runners or bikers just kind of cutting across. I'm also not going to show up and there's going to be like 20 people on the first hole, or potentially like playing and then like on hole 8 someone just jumps in front of me. Like all those things at a certain point, at a certain price point for people is like, all right, I'm drawing the line. Like I don't want to deal with this every time I go play disc golf. So I think there is, like you said, there definitely is a market, but as disc golf grows, it's just going to be like, can that market continue to grow? Because like right now, I agree with you. Like there's probably only a handful of markets in the US where courses like yours make sense, right? You couldn't just drop a course in Atlanta and be like, oh, this is gonna be super successful. People will show up and pay $25 to play here. You got to be a little more strategic there, but maybe eventually one day there it could be like that. Maybe you can just drop a course in a big city and be fine.
Yeah, and like
go ahead.
there's this like there's this world famous disc golf complex up in northern Wisconsin called High Bridge, and it's one of the best disc golf properties I've ever been on. You've been there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you were there in 2007. That's where they had the World Championships actually. But it's so far off the grid that they're kind of struggling to keep it going, and that's just because there's just not enough disc golfers up there. So if that exact property was down here in like around the Twin Cities of Minnesota, it'd be one of the the most played disc golf courses in the world. So definitely you need the right place.
How important do you think too like the land is, right? Because with the funds that disc golf currently has, it doesn't seem like it would be that profitable to put a whole bunch of money into a disc golf course and change it a whole lot, move ground, add a whole bunch, right? So like how important is that to like make sure, because what you were saying, there's tons of golf courses I've gone to that are in the middle of nowhere. They are so hard to get to, but they are very unique. There's something about them that makes them very unique to where when you show up there, you're like, this is special. And I think like if you just put a disc golf course in the woods somewhere, that doesn't necessarily going to make anyone be attracted to drive an hour and a half to go play that course. So what are some like course design things that you have seen that, attracts people to preserve?
Well, the preserve was a golf course. This golf course was built back in the 70s, and I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it cost them like $2 million back in the late 70s to build this place, which is a ton more money now. And what the preserve was when we got it in 2020, it would have taken us probably 5 years to do all that. You know, we were like gifted with this place that already had land walls and creeks and bridges and, you know, all these features that had, you know, that so much money, frankly, was put into it, that we were lucky enough to kind of get it after all that was done. And, you know, for someone to really go in and do it right and say, okay, I got a 100-acre property, I'm going to try to use golf course philosophy and put so much money into this, you know, you got to really be thinking about your return on investment. Unless someone that's got a ton of money, like the Eagles Crossing situation, for example, you know, that guy's put millions into that property, but it takes the right kind of person, someone with a big dream that wants to pull it off. But, you know, they're doing it on a smaller scale is probably a lot more realistic, you know, maybe digging out a couple ponds, you know, doing landscaping projects and stuff like that. But, you know, I think, you know, as the game continues to grow, I think we are going to see some people that come into the sport that are pretty ambitious and have some money and are going to want to do some fun projects. So hopefully I'll get the call when that happens.
Yeah, like I love going and playing the Portland Open on those courses because of just how well manicured that place is. However, you definitely know you're not meant to be there, right? Like it's a golf course and we're playing disc golf there. And every time I've come back to the preserve every year, it gets farther and farther away of, oh, this is a disc golf course on a golf course. It gets closer and closer to like, no, this is just a disc golf course. The way that you guys have done the grass length too, I've been saying that is so important to just visually see like, oh, this is where you want to land. This is not where you want to land. And I love the changes that you have been making over there. I think it's awesome. I know everyone that goes out there to watch it loves it. It's definitely one of the players' favorite courses. So I always look forward to seeing, because, you know, some courses you go and you're like, oh, are they going to elevate? Are they going to elevate hole 7's basket? Is that what's going to be different this year? But I know with you guys out there, there's always something that you guys are doing to advance the course. And I love that the most about your guys' property. All right.
I appreciate that. And I hope you like the couple tweaks that we got for this coming year too. We got about 3 holes in mind that we're going to be tweaking a little bit and making better. So I appreciate you saying that.
You putting hazard down the right side of hole 1?
You know,
that's
definitely one of the things we're considering.
Let the players sweat a little bit on that hole.
I know. I think you're right.
This is one of the things where Cale and I have the opposite thought process. He wants you to be able to throw it wherever you want. I want OB everywhere.
I know, and I know, like, it's kind of half and half and split on the philosophy there. But you know, if there wasn't already so many courses on tour that had OB everywhere, I'd be more likely to do stuff like that. But I just feel like there's a place to have kind of both different styles. But I do have some tweaks. I've been listening to what the players want on a couple of the holes, and hole 1 is definitely one of the ones that I think we might do that.
Nice. All right, last thing here before we let you go. This was actually sent in by a fan. I did ask some fans for some questions for you. This person said, I'd like to know the actual story of the Climo trying to call Cale for an extra throw after his huge putt at the Majestic to tie on 18 in 2007. So we've got the clip. Size, if you can roll the clip. This was like one of the first disc golf videos I saw. And this was electric when I saw. I just randomly stumbled upon. I didn't even know this was you. I had no idea. I think someone had to tell me this was you or something. This was electric.
Let's go.
So I didn't know. Is there a Climo story here that I don't know about? Does he try to call you on something afterwards, or what? Yeah, tell the story if you will.
Well, yeah. If you let that clip roll a little bit, you'll see at the end, after I'm done running around like an idiot for about 20 seconds here, just watch this when I kind of spike my putter down at the end here. So you saw that I spiked my putter down at the end.
Yeah.
This was the final hole.
Oh, did he say that count as an extra throw? That throw down, the spike?
Brody, yes.
No.
Yes. And I just holed out. It was my final hole of the tournament essentially, and that was to tie him on the final hole. And it's honestly, you know, because that was a pretty hype moment. You have to admit, like, especially for 2007 disc golf. Like, I haven't seen a lot of eruptions like that, even on, in
No.
2023. But it was, I think just like the rush of emotion with all the, like, that was my Minnesota crowd behind me. My friends and family are there, and I don't know what got into me, but I'm running around. I pretty much blacked out as I'm running around celebrating and stuff, and I just spiked my putter down, didn't think anything of it, and I remember everyone kind of tapped out on the final hole, and the TD kind of brings us together. It was Timmy Gill at the time, and he says, and Kenny's pretty much trying to get me stroked for an extra practice throw for spiking my putter there. And I'm just like, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, I tied you fair and square. Like, what are you trying to say here? The tournament was over. And I remember, and again, I love Kenny, but it was a heat of the battle kind of thing that happened here. But I remember they asked our group mates, and this was like Nico, who's coming on next, he was in the group as like a 17-year-old kid. And I remember I asked everyone in the group what they thought should happen. And I remember Nico, he goes, "Man, he hit that putt in your face." And just, it was the funniest thing ever. And I remember I was like, "All right, Nico, you're my boy from then on." But
wait, was he right? Was it right ruling to say, like, is that technically could count?
No, he was not right.
Okay, so once you hole out, it doesn't matter what you do.
Yes, and we ended up going to a 4-hole playoff, and like after what just happened, all the excitement and the kind of confrontation between him and I, and the crowd was just way more on my side, especially after this confrontation happened. And I remember we both birdied the first 3 holes, and then on the 4th hole, I had like a 35-foot putt, and he was parked. And I remember just hitting it just low, and he walked up, and he was so hyped. He tapped in his putt, and he's got his arms in the air, chanting Florida, and it was a pretty intense moment for 2007. I'll tell you that.
Wow. Oh man, yeah. I mean that.
I love you, Kenny.
That celebration, like I remember. Going back to Ultimate, we won on what we call Universe Point. It's basically 14-14. Next person to score wins. And one of our best players at the time, this was my freshman year in 2006. He catches the goal and then just rips. We're playing like 25-mile-an-hour winds. He just rips this nasty lefty backhand straight up in the air, and like a wind gust catches it and launches the thing like 500 feet over the pavilion, way out in the middle of nowhere. And it was like one of the sickest, like he launches it up and his arms are up in the air. And it's like, that's like one of the sickest thing. And watching you, I mean, a spike is not near, to me, like that's like, I don't know how you even try to say that's a throw, but I could see that being a future celebration, right? Like someone drains a putt, runs up, grabs the disc, and then just chucks it in the air. That's an electric. I mean, that was one of the best kind of celebrations I think I've seen in disc golf, and we need more of that stuff. To be honest with you, right?
I think so too, man. I was so hyped. I remember I was like down 3 strokes with 3 to play, and so coming back and hitting that putt, I completely just lost it. But yeah, I mean, hearing the crowd just erupt like that, it kind of sparks its own celebration itself just by hearing the crowd eruption. That was unbelievable,
man. All right, well, hey, we appreciate everything, Cale, that you your long career in disc golf and your continued long career in disc golf with all the stuff that you're doing over at the Preserve. I know all of us players, fans, everyone has really appreciated all that you have done for disc golf, and yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on here, man.
Hey, it's really my pleasure, and I seriously want to say thank you guys for working so hard and putting out so much content. We all appreciate it. Because I remember when
we don't do anything. It's all Silas. Silas does everything. Me and Yuli just show up.
Silas is the man.
Silas is the man. Yeah.
I remember like when I first started playing, I had one disc golf DVD, and I probably watched it like 100 times. So all the people getting into the game now that get to watch, you guys talk about disc golf and stuff, it means a lot. So thank you guys.
Yeah, of course. All right, brother. We'll definitely have to have you come back on at some point.
Anytime. All right, boys.
All right, man. Have a good night.